pas à vous manifester, à faire de gros signes pour parler en salle. Cet homme-là.
Just to say thank you, it's a very beautiful movie.
Merci, merci. We love the film too, very, very much. It's very special to us. It took us. It's one of those films that nobody told us to go make it. We didn't buy the script. We didn't have a studio. It was just a story that we really wanted to tell, and we fought really hard. And there's a long story to it, but it very literally almost killed us to make it. It's kind of an important movie for us. So thank you.
Merci, nous aussi avons aimé votre film et je voulais juste vous dire qu'on ne nous a pas payé pour aller le faire ou donner un scénario, c'était vraiment quelque chose auquel on tenait, nous, et on s'est tué à la tâche pour le réaliser.
Pourquoi le film s'appelle Spring? Pourquoi c'est printemps?
We called it Spring because thematically the movie's about rebirth, and also in the third act, Louise expresses that the equinox was very important to her biology.
Nous avons appelé ce film Printemps puisque ça parle de renaissance et également parce que dans la troisième partie du film, le personnage de Louise parle de l'équinoxe.
There was also, it's a movie of juxtapositions of grotesque with beauty and violence with making love, and we thought that the image of the word spring, spring on a poster with body horror on it, or blood, seemed like also a good juxtaposition that represented the story well.
Et également parce que le film parle de paradoxe et de juxtaposition, le fait par exemple que ce soit le mélange du grotesque et de la beauté, de l'amour avec la mort, et donc il trouvait ça intéressant que le nom Spring, printemps, soit sur une affiche un peu horrible.
Ok, merci. Et la deuxième question, j'ai surtout apprécié les coulisses italiennes. Ça a rendu beaucoup plus de valeur dans ce film. Je me demande pourquoi vous avez choisi que le film ait lieu en Italie.
For the most part, it always took place in Italy. He had been there before, I hadn't, but for the most part, it was on the Amalfi Coast of Italy, and that is a very, very difficult place to film. We found out as we were, bootstrapping the film together. So we were like, okay, well, we can't film it on the Amalfi Coast. Where else can we film it? And we looked at, silly places like Colombia or Montenegro or stuff like that. And that's just not, that's not what the film is. And, yeah, I'll give it to you.
Donc le film devait vraiment se tenir en Italie et Justin avait déjà été sur la côte et simplement c'était très compliqué techniquement de filmer là-bas, donc ils ont cherché d'autres endroits, en Colombie par exemple, mais vraiment le film devait se tenir au sud de l'Italie, donc c'est là qu'ils l'ont fait.
But so we went to the Cannes Film Festival, not with a film. We went there, paying our own way, and we were living like two hobos, with like cheap suits and bicycles, and we were just riding around trying to get the film made, in a kind of vague way, and we were able to get the Apulian Film Commission. Apulia is in the heel of the boot of Italy, to give us a scout. And all of the same locations that were in the Amalfi Coast happened to be in Apulia, but Apulia is not well trafficked for film. It's not expensive. They have crew. They have tax breaks, and so we had this kind of beautiful 4-day scout all over the coast of Italy, and the whole time we're just like, this is the place. We can actually film here. This is incredible, and that's why I stayed Italy.
Donc ils se sont promenés dans un premier temps pour faire des repérages, donc en sac à dos, vraiment un peu à l'arrache. Et au fur et à mesure, ils ont trouvé des endroits qui étaient vraiment parfaits pour le film, donc ça a confirmé ce choix.
Petite question qui peut paraître un peu... enfin bref. Voilà, je me demandais s'il y avait un élément ou plusieurs éléments autobiographiques en fait, dans le film. Et si oui, quels étaient-ils? Et sinon, en fait, d'où vient l'inspiration justement on sait que Justin est en Italie. Et qu'est-ce qui a pu le motiver à ce moment-là à écrire une histoire qui se déroulait là-bas? Et puis aussi, d'où vient cette inspiration de cette créature? Quelle est-elle? D'où vient-elle?
It's not autobiographical, but I think what happens is that when I go to write a screenplay, that I think like most writers, I tend to come up with stories that fit my strengths as a writer. And in this case, I had already written a movie that was a very interesting examination of a friendship, very dialogue heavy, and so I thought it would be a challenge for me to write a movie about people expressing themselves in a romantic relationship in very unique ways, and that it would be an advancement for me, but it would also suit my strengths, which again is the whole story. Everything I write is just to suit dialogue, because that's the only thing I actually know how to do.
Donc pour répondre à votre question, non, ce n'est pas autobiographique, mais j'ai voulu écrire quelque chose qui correspondait donc, en tant que scénariste à ce qui étaient mes forces. J'avais déjà écrit un film auparavant à propos d'une histoire d'amitié entre deux personnes, et cette fois, pour aller un petit peu plus loin, j'ai voulu écrire une histoire d'amour. Et à propos de la créature, est-ce que vous pourriez préciser votre question?
Oui.
D'où vient l'idée de la créature? Est-ce qu'il y a une inspiration au niveau, je sais pas, mythologique ou quelque chose comme ça?
When our first movie, Resolution, when we would show it to people, they would always assume that our unseen monster was some monster that they had seen before. And what we realized was that audiences were so accustomed to seeing the same monsters over and over and over again that even if you gave something that was unique but subtle about it, no one quite understands it, because it's a very unusual thing. So here we just wanted to invent our own monster mythology, and we thought that monster mythology would be visually more effective if it was nature-based, because most people agree that the best monster of all time is the xenomorph from Alien, which is a nature-based parasitic design. So this was an opportunity to also do something that's a nature-based design and hopefully have more psychological impact for the audience.
Donc on nous a posé la même question sur notre premier film qui s'appelait en anglais Résolution, à propos d'un monstre, et c'est intéressant de voir que le public a toujours besoin de faire référence à quelque chose qu'il connaît déjà dans la mythologie ou un alien ou autre, mais nous avons voulu au contraire faire quelque chose qui était basé sur le naturel. And what was the name of the specific?
The xenomorph.
Alors là, c'est la catégorie de créatures dont il s'agit qui est en fait basée sur quelque chose de naturel.
Also, there's a connection that Justin made when I first read the script that I thought was so cool, where I've never made the connection between, for example, like the Universal Pictures movie monsters, you know, the werewolf, the vampire, the Dracula, all of those. If you look at the individual pieces of them, they actually look like little pieces of human evolution. You know, the werewolf kind of looks like an ape, and Dracula has fangs, you know, like we used to have. And there's never really been a scientific examination of where those monsters may come from. And I feel like there's the possibility that maybe Louise inspired, you know, maybe her condition, people saw her doing these things and it actually inspired the later monsters that we now have today, Dracula and werewolf and all that. And so it's kind of an interesting connection that I've never seen made, that all of it kind of comes from our previous evolution. And also, I think Justin had a girlfriend once an ex-girlfriend, you know, that looked like just a disaster, you know, like, oh, let's make it look like her, you know.
Donc Aaron ajoute que si vous regardez les grosses productions américaines, chaque monstre peut être lié d'une certaine façon à un stade de l'évolution, que ce soit le chimpanzé pour King Kong ou autre. Et là, du coup, dans le personnage de Louise, on retrouve un peu tous ces différents stades. Et donc l'anecdote ensuite, c'est qu'une ex de Justin avait un...
Désastre.
Était un désastre.
Ouais. On reconnaît au début du film, dans le rôle de Tom, l'acteur principal qui est aussi le réalisateur de The Battery. J'aimerais connaître vos liens et savoir si vous avez l'impression de représenter une nouvelle scène dans le cinéma indépendant et de genre aux États-Unis, et nous parler de cette scène un peu et des gens qui aujourd'hui pour vous peuvent en faire partie.
Thank you. It's a really exciting time for genre film, because even though the budgets are much smaller and there's less money to make the films, because you know there's less money in distribution now, but it's actually the most exciting time ever because of things like video on demand, alternative forms of distribution. There are people, young filmmakers, taking more risks because the stakes are lower. There's less money to make back, and even though there's less money, the return on investment is it's a little bit easier, and it does allow for more risks as long as the films are made cheaply, and that's creating the most exciting time in independent genre cinema ever.
Donc pour Justin Benson, en ce moment, c'est une période vraiment intéressante dans ce genre-là, puisqu'il y a généralement moins de budget, mais ça permet aux réalisateurs d'être plus innovants et de prendre plus de risques, avec moins de budget au départ, mais pour un enjeu qui peut rapporter quand même.
Yeah, I think it's getting easier and easier to go and make a film. It's still just as hard to make a good film, I think, but actually getting out the door and making a film is now, you know, the bar is a lot lower and a lot more affordable, which is kind of making this incredible, you know, that coupled with digital distribution, making this wild west of film. And so the lines are getting blurred between what is a genre film and what's just a film. We've never particularly really cared about genre very much. No, I'm sorry, not genre film. We don't care about what genre we're working in very much. It doesn't really matter to us. I think, you know, as long as character first, and you know, I think as long as we stick to that, it'll always make something that people can really dig their teeth into.
Pour Aaron, il trouve que en ce moment, enfin, en cette période, c'est facile entre guillemets de faire un film. Et pour eux, la question du genre n'est pas si importante, du moment qu'ils arrivent à faire un bon film.
donc quand je parlais d'une nouvelle scène aux États-Unis, j'entendais peut-être, je m'attendais à ce qu'il me parle de quelques noms de gens desquels il se sentait proche.
Citadel, he's an Irish filmmaker. Jim Mickle does really, really, really good stuff. Jeremy Gardner, who was in the film, he's making some incredible work. Everybody that's in the mumblecore wave that was coined, it's a terrible term, but.
But can you tell us more about that, about the mumblecore, please?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. I think it was LA Weekly who coined the term mumblecore, and we feel really grateful that there's press about us and all these other filmmakers making interesting sort of progressive genre film. And at the same time, it's interesting when you get grouped into a sort of film movement that you never intentionally. You didn't all have a plan. You're not all working toward with the same philosophies of filmmaking at all. And in fact, Aaron and I really benefited early in our career from guys like Adam Wingard and Ty West and Jim Mickle, and that they would get referenced in our press releases as us being part of their group. And we never met them. They had no idea who we were, but they were very well established compared to us. So that was nice.
Donc pour Justin, il n'y a pas vraiment on ne planifie pas vraiment d'être dans un genre ou dans un autre, mais il cite le LA Weekly et il est assez content que la presse relaie, en tout cas cite différents réalisateurs ensemble, et il est assez fier que ces réalisateurs, alors peut-être que Fausto peut m'aider pour les prononciations.
Parmi leurs amis, Kieran Foy, qui a eu Citadel, qui avait été récompensé ici. Jeremy Gardner, qui a aussi été projeté ici à l'Élysée Place Rouge. Je crois que c'était à peu près tout parmi les réalisateurs.
I think a lot of the easiest way to define this like the new wave of horror, whatever that exactly is probably just that they a lot of the time they're focusing on performance and on character before they're focusing on the visceral thrills, and that might be that I don't know exactly that's been going on forever, but I think there's a lot of people that are getting into this idea of if you care about the characters a whole lot, you're going to be even more worried when they're getting hurt, when they're running around and being chased, and that's I think the core of it is that as long as you're caring about people instead of going into it wondering how they're going to get chopped up, that's probably the absolute core of that movement. But it's not it's not something that we all sit around and talk about over beers. Most of us haven't even met each other. It's just something it's a good category to be in.
Donc Justin disait avant qu'il était parfois surpris que les articles de presse fassent référence à ces autres auteurs qu'eux-mêmes n'avaient en fait jamais rencontrés. Ensuite, Aaron nous disait que le mouvement ou le genre mettait l'accent beaucoup sur les personnages et l'histoire, et pour lui, les personnages en effet ont une part très importante dans l'histoire qu'ils veulent raconter.
Ici.
Hi, I'm Italian, and my French is very bad, so sorry, I'm going to use English.
No, thank you. Go on.
Okay. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of American movies, when they're set up in Italy, it kind of feels like a Family Guy sketch. Everything is stereotypes. Not here. It felt real, normal. Italian village.
Grazie.
And I was just wondering if it was something you were trying to do, make it look not stereotyped, or if it just happened this way.
Je vais simplement traduire la question. Ce jeune homme est italien et dit que dans la plupart des films américains, l'Italie est vraiment stéréotypée. Il trouve que Aaron et Benson ne sont pas allés dans les clichés extrêmes et quel était leur point de vue sur ça?
I probably spent enough time just backpacking a broke student around Italy to pick up enough to where it wouldn't feel like a Family Guy sketch. But then, more importantly, we had an Italian group and an Italian producer and lots of people around us that would usually, as far as we know, tell us if something seemed really inauthentic. But that's really interesting you should say that, because one fear that, not really fear, but one concern that we have about the film is that because it takes place in let's call it rural Italy, that it'll seem like for example, well, there's an Italian farmer, so now we're stereotyping all older Italian men as farmers. That's a concern. But ultimately it comes down to this: the story takes place in a very small town where it is very traditional. So, it's going to be, for someone watching it who's from Rome or Milan, these characters may seem like stereotypes. In fact, it may be characters that never actually had an interaction with. They're only from an urban, cosmopolitan part of Italy. But thank you for saying that. It was authentic.
Half my family is from this kind of village, and it's fine.
Okay.
Donc merci pour cette question. Donc personnellement, Justin avait passé beaucoup de temps en tant que backpacker, donc le sac à dos avec peu d'argent à découvrir les lieux. Donc il en a vraiment pris connaissance. Mais principalement, l'équipe était pour la plupart composée d'Italiens. Et donc ce qui explique la sincérité des paysages et des personnages. Maintenant, c'est possible que ce soit pris pour des clichés, même de la part d'autres Italiens urbains, du fait que l'on montre un petit village avec le cliché, par exemple, du monsieur, de l'agriculteur parmi les oliviers. Question suivante.
Bonsoir. Votre monstre, à un moment, ressemble à celui qui couche avec Isabelle Adjani dans Possession d'Andrzej Zulawski. Et justement, Zulawski utilise le monstre pour montrer la fin d'une histoire d'amour, et vous l'utilisez pour montrer le début. Est-ce que ce film a une influence sur vous ou pas? Ou sinon, quelles sont vos influences en tant que cinéaste?
We've actually we've heard the possession reference before, but and we feel like total film cretins. We have not seen Possession yet, and I'm really
Ils n'ont pas
sorry.
vu ce film et ils vont donner leur autre référence.
And we're worried that if we do see it, then we'll be able to say we have seen Possession, and then people are like, you ripped it off, like, oh wait, we just saw it like last week. But no, no, we have not. But there's a lot. I mean, we have so many film influences, but we try really, really. There's no way to avoid standing on the shoulders of giants, but you try really hard to, when you see the way something is going, to try to go the other way because it's already been done that way, and you don't want to be that person again. There's no reason to be that person again,
Il y a donc évidemment énormément de références, mais ils veulent plutôt éviter de refaire la même chose et de faire leur propre film, voire en faisant le contraire de ce qu'ils ont déjà fait.
We could name a bunch, but they're just good movies, they're not ones that we try to try to go do. You
On
know.
pourrait vous donner quelques titres, mais ils ne s'en sont pas inspirés outre mesure.
I have a question about casting. I've never seen these actors before in film, but they're really perfect as characters, and they really kind of make the story believable. So even when more fantastic stuff happens, I felt it was still organic in the story. So can you talk about how you found it? Thanks.
Donc c'est une question à propos des deux personnages principaux et comment ils les ont trouvés.
You say Lou. Well, Lou did this film called Thumbsucker. That's a really incredible film if you ever get to see it. Well, what was really amazing about it is, he was 17 or 18 when he made it, and he was in there with acting gods, like Vincent D'Onofrio and Tilda Swinton and Keanu Reeves, and he's holding his own. He is the star of the movie among all of these movie stars, and he's a 17 or 18-year-old kid. I mean, he is one of the best actors that we have right now, especially in that age range. And when he sent the Spring offices a bribe of $100 million, we had cast him immediately, without even thinking about it, really.
Donc pour Aaron, c'est Lou le personnage principal qui a vraiment aidé au film. Et à propos du casting, excusez-moi. Excusez-moi, j'avais pas bien compris, mais alors l'idée c'est que le personnage Lou leur a envoyé un pot de vin pour être dans le film. Je suis pas sûre que c'était sérieux, mais voilà.
He also really fit the role very well. We met him.
Évidemment, il convenait parfaitement au rôle.
And he had just been in the Evil Dead remake, and he'd asked his managers had said, "What do you want to do next?" And he says, "I want to do a kind of a love story with a kind of a sci-fi horror angle." And they said, "Lou, that doesn't really exist. There aren't movies like that." And then like a week later, he was set Spring, and so then like a day later, we were sitting in a cafe talking about it, and it was kind of his coming of age story, as like him coming of age as an actor, because he's been playing younger roles and now he's playing older, but also in the film he's kind of a man who's in this personal tailspin that turns out to make some decisions to kind of grow up.
Donc après son précédent film, il avait envie de faire quelque chose un peu plus science-fiction, horreur, et c'était assez surprenant pour son entourage, mais juste après il a eu cette proposition pour Spring qu'il a acceptée.
Anytime Lou says he wants to play a particular role to his management, it always happens. Last week he told his management he wanted to play a woman, and he got cast as a woman last week. I'm not joking.
Justine ajoute que Lou a toujours, avec ses managers de la chance, à chaque fois qu'il leur dit qu'il aimerait faire tel ou tel type de film, ça marche. Ça a marché pour Spring. Et il se trouve que dernièrement, il leur a dit qu'il voulait jouer le rôle d'une femme. Et dernière nouvelle, c'est que ça a marché aussi. Donc imaginez-le avec une perruque. Voilà, ce sera le prochain film.
Very good. We cast Nadia by Skype. She was a recommendation from several producers who we had met internationally, and specifically Europe, who had met with her about other projects that hadn't quite worked out, and they spoke very highly of her. And then we did several auditions over Skype, which anyone who's ever done online dating knows that's really risky.
Concernant Nadia, le personnage donc de Louise, ils l'ont castée par Skype. Elle avait été recommandée par plusieurs contacts producteurs. Et c'est comme ça que ça a fonctionné. Donc si vous savez ce que ça peut donner pour le online dating, pour les sites de rencontres en ligne, voilà, c'était assez risqué.
If I can paint a little picture of this casting process, it's, him and I, we go over to, I could call it an office. It's like a little closet. And we turn on Skype and we talk to her a little bit. And here's the thing: is this movie it's not just like, oh, you can cast anyone in that role. I mean, she is the center of the movie. She's everything, And we get off the Skype call and we're like, we press the end button. We look at each other and we're kind of like, she's really good, right? Like, and you kind of, like, there's this terrifying moment that the other person might say that she's not good, and you're kind of like, she's right? Like, because if she's not, this movie's gonna fall apart. And luckily we were both in agreement. We're just like, she's got it, she's it, you know. And that was, there's those like few seconds of terror of like, am I right? Is he right? Are we right? Like, is she right? Yeah.
C'était donc risqué et effrayant à la fois de faire ce casting par Skype, puisque Louis est donc le personnage central dans cette histoire. Et après les conversations sur Skype, quand ils éteignaient l'écran, il y avait quelques secondes de frayeur, et Aaron regardait Justine en se disant j'espère qu'on est tous les deux d'accord pour que ça fonctionne, parce que c'est très important.
It's really difficult to cast an actor who has to, the audience has to believe that she was Roman, and that her accent is from 6 different places, and that she's ethnically almost impossible to place. So luckily we found that in her. But interesting story, we were once asked to cast Paris Hilton in this role.
That's true.
And nothing against Paris Hilton, it was probably a poor fit, especially now that you see.
C'était particulièrement difficile du fait que le personnage était censé être né à Rome, avoir un accent venant de 6 pays différents et des origines culturelles donc diverses, comme vous l'avez compris dans le film. Alors croyez-le ou non, mais on nous a suggéré de caster Paris Hilton, mais bon, comme vous voyez, le résultat quand même mieux comme on l'a fait.
There was this really serious moment about halfway through rehearsal. Justin turns to me, and we casted them a while ago. We were in Italy rehearsing, and the movie was about to go in a week. And he turns to me, and he looks really serious, and he goes, "Aaron, we are really lucky that she's actually a good actor."
Pour continuer, Aaron dit qu'ils étaient en pleine répétition, à 1 semaine après à peine du début du tournage. Et là, Justine s'est tournée vers Aaron en disant on a quand même de la chance que ce soit une bonne comédienne.
This gentleman right, you already have a microphone? Yes, this gentleman right here. Bonjour.
I've been working on
my English, so try. Oh, your English accent is perfect. Go on.
Can you tell me about the approach to the photography? Please touch on the drone stuff, but also why does it appear really subjective, like there's an omniscient force through the whole movie, in addition to...
Never really thought about that.
Alors Aaron, toi qui es sur le film, spécifiquement directeur de la photographie, peux-tu nous dire pourquoi il y a toujours ce point de vue subjectif de la caméra?
Thank you, sir. We have a half and half approach to the way that we shoot movies. The one half of it is it's extremely practical. We like to be able to set all of our lights, and just ideally just once per scene. We don't relight shot by shot, and it might suffer. The image might suffer for it, but you gain a naturalism. But more importantly, with performance, you don't have to stop. You just shoot from the beginning of the scene all the way to the end. And it's hard to quantify exactly what that does, but you can tell, when the crew actually seems engaged of watching, theater rather than, shooting 10 seconds at a time and then another 10 seconds. That helps a lot. And then maybe my co-director, Justin Benson, can talk about the drone photography.
Ce qu'on aime en fait sur nos scènes, on met l'installation, les lumières une seule fois, et on a tendance à ne pas les changer en cours du tournage de cette scène précisément, ce qui donne une impression de réalisme, même si parfois l'esthétique est moins belle à certains moments, mais du coup même toute l'équipe se sent plus concernée dans le feu de l'action, et on a des scènes plus fluides et plus réalistes.
Before I answer the other part of the question, I just want to say thank you to everyone for staying for this whole Q&A. This is very fun for us.
Actually, while you're in the applauding mood, let me take a quick second and talk about this festival. being incredibly well organized, and you have a whole audience filling out a whole theater in their 4th year, and a beautiful projection on a giant screen. So can I applaud you guys? Yeah.
So drones.
Roulement de tambour.
No one lets us have a helicopter ever, but the little flying thing the producers are okay with. And basically, after we had shot listed the entire movie, Aaron and I get together for a few days, and we go through the photography for the entire movie, the general approach, and every single shot very specifically. And then after we did that, our first assistant cameraman came to us and said, "Hey, I have a drone. Do you want me to bring it to Italy? We can use it?"
Yes.
Hell yeah. So we had already decided that the shots would feel omniscient, and that, you know, the closer you get to feeling like there's some other force in the film, the better. And so now, quite literally, we had the ability to do these extreme God's eye view shots, and to have a shot start out looking like a Steadicam shot and then fly off into the sea.
Donc au début, nos producteurs évidemment ne nous ont pas donné d'hélicoptère. On a fait tout le tournage comme on a pu, puis on s'est ensemble posé sur la post-prod et l'édition. Et vers la fin, on nous a appelés pour nous dire qu'on pouvait nous confier un drone. Donc c'était vraiment très important de pouvoir ajouter ces images vues du ciel, notamment une scène au tout début, si vous vous souvenez, en tout cas qui était shootée vue de haut, qui était primordiale.
And Aaron has a really funny story for everyone about our first day sea traveling with the drone. Story time.
Une petite histoire de la part d'Aaron.
So he's, you know, he has to fly with all of his equipment to Italy. And because it's very expensive, he carries it with him on the airplane. But because we bought only the discount air tickets, the flights, he had to fly through Moscow. And so he gets to the Moscow airport, and they're like, "Open it." And he opens it up, and they kind of take a step back, you know. And they're like, "This is weapon or toy?" And he kind of looks around, and he's like, it's a toy." And they're like, "Oh, okay, you go." Let him on the plane with this thing that looks like a lawnmower blade weapon, you know.
Il explique donc que Justin avait pris l'avion en prenant les billets le moins cher possible avec ce matériel qui était également le mieux qu'ils avaient pu trouver, mais à bon prix. Et comme ils avaient les billets d'avion le moins cher possible, ils ont dû faire une escale à Moscou pour arriver en Italie, et les douanes, en ouvrant leurs bagages, ont eu un mouvement comment dire, ils leur ont demandé si c'était des armes ou des jouets, ce à quoi Justin a répondu, ne vous inquiétez pas, ce sont des jouets.
Do the Russian accent. Accent russe. Okay, go on.
Je voulais savoir si vous avez une idée de ce que va être votre prochain film.
Our next film is it's a movie about Aleister Crowley, who is an infamous occultist from Victorian England. And it's about 1 week in his life when he performed a ritual that was very dangerous to his health.
Le prochain film parlera de Aleister Crowley. Donc, Fausto, tu as plus d'infos sur le personnage?
Les fans de satanisme et d'occulte doivent connaître cet homme. Vous connaissez tous Aleister Crowley? Oui.
Voilà donc le sujet de leur prochain film.
Dans le film, il y a une seule victime humaine. C'est un touriste américain un peu bas de plafond. Qui ne sait pas parler français apparemment. Ça nous a tous fait beaucoup rire, mais comment est-ce que le public américain y réagit? Puis pourquoi est-ce que vous avez décidé de placer ce type de personnage comme victime dans votre film?
Personal experience and nothing. I have nothing against any nationality on the planet, but in my personal experience, American tourists are the most obnoxious. They're the worst.
Donc ça vient d'expérience personnelle. Les touristes américains, de l'expérience personnelle de Justin, sont les pires.
Just generalization, not all, just some. They can be. And in that case, we needed a character that the audience wouldn't view Louise in a negative light after she did what she did. That this was, he was a bad person in addition to being a rapist, in addition to being annoying, and that the audience wouldn't lose their sympathy for Louise when she ripped his penis off and threw him off a cliff.
Et pour que Louise ne soit pas mal aimée du public, il fallait que sa seule victime soit quelqu'un d'un peu mauvais, un violeur potentiel et un touriste un peu qu'on peut voir disparaître sans souci.
And the response from the American public's been fine. We're very used to getting criticized.
Quant à la seconde partie de votre question sur comment le public américain voit ça, il n'y a pas de souci pour Justin, ils ont l'habitude de la critique, d'être critiqués.
Pardon, mon anglais c'est terrible, alors je vais parler français.
Is that Estonian?
Oui.
No, the writing of the movie is very naturalistic, and sometimes is not fully based on plot, and is more based on developing feelings between two people. Can you talk about your process for that and your everyday writing routine?
Et quant au scénario, puisque ce n'est pas très naturaliste, je ne sais pas trop comment on pourrait traduire ça, naturaliste, c'est basé sur une intrigue et une histoire d'amour. Que pouvez-vous en dire et que pouvez-vous dire sur votre façon d'écrire?
My first job out of college was working in a Hollywood development office. We just read thousands and thousands of scripts that come through the office. And having that at an early point in my career, it gave me a negative impression of conventional, highly structured screenwriting. And then I noticed that movies by people like Quentin Tarantino and movies by Steven Soderbergh and movies by Richard Linklater, that these types of films were the films that really made me feel emotions, what these scripts never did.
Alors, après mes études, j'ai eu un premier boulot dans un bureau à Hollywood qui consistait à lire des centaines de scénarios. À force de les lire, j'ai eu l'impression qu'il y avait vraiment un côté très conventionnel à la façon dont étaient faits tous ces scénarios. Pour moi, les films qui m'ont peut-être le plus touché, c'est ceux de Tarantino, Soderbergh, et ceux-là, par exemple, n'ont pas de scénario très conventionnel, ou en tout cas moins que les autres.
And then, since Aaron and I, since our career was started by making a self-financed film, we could break any rule we wanted to. And because of those experiences, I was more inclined in the writing process, and now Aaron and I, the filmmaking process, to break rules that you're supposed to follow. Some of those rules are good, but when you follow too many of them, you get something oftentimes a bit bland. But as far as the writing process goes, I try to live my life as a writer as like a person with a 9-to-5 job who wakes up at 9 in the morning and just writes all day until I can't write anymore, and then that's all I can really do. But while I'm writing it, that if the scene feels like the moment is working, but it's not furthering the plot necessarily. That doesn't mean you should leave it out.
Au tout début, Aaron et moi, quand on a commencé, notre premier film, c'était autoproduit. On a fait comme on a pu et du coup, on a continué comme ça à avoir un scénario un peu hors norme qui ne suit pas les conventions habituelles. Quand j'écris, je me lève le matin, j'écris toute la journée non-stop et parfois j'écris certaines parties, certaines séquences de films qui peut-être n'ont pas de continuité, mais je sais qu'elles pourront servir plus tard. Voilà ma façon de travailler.
He's like a caffeine-fueled writing robot.
Donc c'est comme un robot dont l'essence serait de la caféine. Voilà comment il fonctionne.
Je voudrais qu'on remercie du coup Justine et Aaron. On va devoir couper les questions. Sans égalité.
Very much. We're going to be actually going over to Murphy's right after this, grab some drinks. So if you want to talk a little more, we're going to be there. We're very easy to talk to.
Merci.